It's another week in the For Your Reference household, and as we reference Archer, Lana!
What?
Small miracles. This podcast we like to think of as small miracles. If you're in a weird space in this panorama paninis, we do have a confusing OT Shrek episode. We have an angry Katie Legally Blonde episode. And I'm very excited to see what will be immortalized in this episode today. Let's get on with the show. Suppressing fire! Pew pew. Friends and lovers, welcome back to the For Your Reference podcast. You got your host, Katie.
And Dottie.
Enter the criminal underbelly based on a true story of loud suits, dairy farmers, and my man.
Mm-hmm.
Get a taste of blue magic this week with American Gangster.
Woohoo.
Woo-hoo-hoo. Or sniff, sniff, sniff.
Wow.
I'll do some sniffing. It's a Denzel film again. Released in 2007, we have director capital T-H-E, Ridley Scott.
Mm-hmm.
A first, I believe, for the For Your Reference podcast.
Yep.
Writers, it is based off of an article, The Return of Superfly by Mark Jacobson, written by Steven Zalian. What a cast, OT.
Yeah.
There is so much, and I hope we can cover a lot of the cast. Top billing, of course. Denzel, all of the wet pussies, Washington.
Mm-hmm.
Immortalize me in that plaque, OT. Russell Crowe with Tugger all around the world. Chiwetel Ejiofor with his little white strip of hair. We need to cover that one of these days.
We do.
I think if we reference something too much throughout the podcast, we need to cover that film.
Mm-hmm.
And Josh Brolin. There's a whole, we've also got Cuba Gooding Jr. We also have our fella from Deadwood.
John Hawkes.
Nice. And Deadwood, our podcast, is really the golden age of this podcast. So go and watch Deadwood just to delight your McShane McGinnis. But also go and check out the formation of the term Daddywood in our Deadwood episode. But if this is the first time you are joining us, friends and lovers, if you are the Cheeto finger dusted American Gangster poster of them all, Film Bros, welcome to the podcast. I don't know if you're going to be disappointed, but we welcome you to sit on our Jupiter's cocks.
Indeed.
And if you've listened to this podcast more than once, you will know, and you shouldn't be surprised, that we earn our explicit tag very early. All right, OT, so let's get into first impressions. Because I don't think if we discussed if you had watched this film or if this was a first time watch. How did you feel if this was your first, and how do you feel now?
This is my second watch, but I really can't remember anything from my first. I think it was just in the background. I didn't really pay too much attention to it.
Feels like a Stephanie McMahon Triple H situation. I can wrestle, podcast friends and lovers.
Wow. I think this was really, really good. I enjoyed it. We've watched a lot of this sort of shows this year, and it felt like, if you're pulling correlations with Snowfall or
The Wire to an extent.
Yeah.
Song Kang Ho's The Drug King if you're nasty.
There's so much of it here, and I think it's just my jam. Like Denzel, being in this situation where he has to learn all those things, I just freaking loved it. And the fact that no one even gave him a shot, like, a black guy leading all this? Nah, not even.
That's a very interesting point, which I'm sure we'll get to when we start to tease out the characters and I guess what they represent in the story, and I guess even broader into real life. But there was definitely a comment there. There were a lot of some really primo lines that really, underscored what was being touched on in the film. Absolutely. Like, is there anything Denzel can't do?
No.
Well, he can't hold the legacy on for his seed. But that's I've said many things, but that will stay on the Patreon, OT. Unless you release the KT John David Washington cut. While we're speaking of the ever eternal Denzel, go and check out Training Day. And we do love Ethan Hawke, so we do have an episode on Training Day. We also have an episode on Fallen. We haven't covered Denzel this year, so this is our first Denzel of our third year of podcasting, OT.
Nice.
Speaking of who we've recently just covered, Russell Crowe. Go and check out The Sum of Us. This was the first time I've watched this film. I've only become familiar in it through title, without any sort of context. I kind of just thought it kind of laid in the tapestry of the greats, The Godfather, Scarface, insert other gangster sort of films. I just assumed it was a film that I needed to watch. It didn't disappoint me like The Departed, but again, that is shielded in Patreon.
Was this, you held that, you thought this movie was held in such high esteem to Scarface and The Godfather?
Well, I think it's the name. It has a lot of gravitas, like American Gangster. It has a very strong name, you must admit.
Wow. Nah, I didn't even think that.
It's got a strong name and a great ass.
Wow.
And I guess something that I was thinking about as well, because we never got into, I guess to digress for a second, we never got a chance to watch our Wakandan king, Forrest Whitaker's Godfather of Harlem. And I do believe he's playing Bumpy, who is the predecessor to Frank Lucas's character.
Oh.
Or Frank Lucas as a figure within life, right? So, yeah, without any sort of context, it's interesting. And I do like after, the episode gets released and people are like, Katie, where have you been? I just assumed it was a classic because of the name, like American Gangster. It sounds like it needs to be in box set somewhere.
Well, there's American Hustler. You're not hearing anyone talk about it.
I'm sure there'll be a reboot of The Rock doing backflips on the moon. I'm sure they'll fit it in somehow. But I really enjoyed this film. I really enjoyed it. I know we talk a lot about runtime, but man, this was like Avatar level runtime. I think we got it, guys. Like, I think we can pack up and go home now. I think that's the biggest, if I were to have a qualm, it would be the runtime of this film, because I got it. I was in. And, we talk about this a lot. We recently covered Snowfall. Like the format and the criminalization of drugs kind of gets suspended in order to be able to be entertained by the genre. So in that sort of sense, we were primed and we were ready. Even though this is a film that didn't recently come out, we're used to this sort of format. So we're already highly engaged or wanting to be engaged and wanting to enjoy this film, right? So it was hitting all of the marks. I must say, I don't know if it's just like with the advancements of technology and people being able to make more movies. It's like music was cherished so much more decades ago when you could only make so much music, but now you can make as much music as you want. I don't know what it is now or what the offerings are in acting in all different sort of ages, sexes, and genders. I really enjoyed Russell Crowe's accent. It was effortlessly an American accent coined by the brown Australian girl. I feel like he had a very good American accent without, we make fun of Carl Urban as much as we love Carl Urban. I think we kind of just accept that he's not Michael Caine. Maybe he's like Michael Caine in that old man heist movie that Michael Caine was in. But there is an art to being an actor, and Russell Crowe really achieved the American accent in this. I don't know. I just wanted to give some accolades because sometimes we just accept that, like Liam Neeson's, you just accept that the accent is going to drop off eventually.
I don't even think it's there to start off with.
If you stay inconsistent, you don't need to be
I
consistent.
think that shows you the level of an actor you need to be, where your accent means, but you still get roles because it's your name.
And that reminds me, go and listen to our Godfather episode where we talked about Marlon Brando, and you can do whatever the fuck you want at a certain point when you have a level of talent. But such a talented cast of film all along the way, really. I think the only gripe and the only qualm I would have would be the running time for this film. Everything else I enjoyed.
Yeah, me too.
I think, I guess just starting to talk about the film, I really liked the dynamics that was starting to form within the film. When we start the film, we're meeting Frank Lucas as a very dutiful driver, and I guess aspirationally as a 2IC. He might have been doing the grunt work, but he was loyal and he was reliable, and he was always with Bumpy when he was doing all of his community shit and when he was doing all of his criminal shit. So he was really getting some free internship, sort of apprenticeship advice.
Yeah, paid internship.
Well, that's an oxymoron, right? I don't want to go into this, but don't you remember Vince Vaughn and I think Owen Wilson had a film called Internship?
Yeah, they'd gone to Google or something.
Yeah, skip ahead. And I'm the one that brought it up. There are hierarchies of watching stuff, and I don't think that even qualifies as a plain film.
Wow.
Yeah. Jesus Christ. But yes, I really enjoyed this film. I liked the way they were setting up the dynamics. We're in New York, and much like my naivety when we were covering You Got Mail, I only understand New York through films. I understand there are like 5 boroughs of New York, and usually there are big crime families that run it. And you've got different races that oversee the criminal underbelly. You've got the Italians. I think they also mentioned the Cubans. You've also got Bumpy. And they all kind of have an understanding, because it's not going to work once you start fucking shit up. And Idris Elba is in this film, is he not?
Yeah, he is.
I clocked it. I said he would be the first one to get shot.
It was very obvious. They made it very obvious he was going to go.
He was too ambitious.
Not even. It was just disrespectful. He thought his shit don't stink. He thought he'd be the boss just because.
I think
it's all mine now.
Yeah. Kind of like Man Boy in Snowfall.
Yeah, but weirdly, Man Boy had more intelligence to him.
Or at least he knew his place. Or he knew to assume the place until he could,
play
cloak
a
and
fool
dagger.
until you get to the top.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I guess it's quite common even in the Game of Thrones of it all, even in the Vikings of it all, even in the HBO Succession of it all. Whenever there is a new position to be filled and that position is the head, there is always going to be some sort of conflict.
Oh, definitely. I think once there's vacuum, there's always going to be someone coming for that spot. It was just a matter of time, you take Frank Lucas down, there'll always be another person on top of it, regardless.
Yeah. And I think it was quite interesting to see how Frank chose to lead. And I guess when he gave his guys some rope, because, you kind of need to give them space. Especially if they're like your Gustavo from Narcos, or your Tommy from Power, like you kind of, if they're going to be doing the dirty work and the terrible killings and the cloak and dagger shit of it all, they kind of need a release. Right? Or even like recently in The Shy with the trap house. Like if they're going to be deplorable, disgusting things that need to be done in order to maintain order, you kind of need to give them some rope. And I think Frank did very well in navigating how much power he exerted and when he kind of just let the men be.
Yeah, but he was very brutal. He was very heavy-handed with his leadership, though.
With the piano?
And that was his cousin. Imagine some random guy. He probably doesn't walk out of that.
Yeah, but isn't it like prison rules? Like you need to go and beat up the biggest, toughest guy so people know not to fuck around with you?
Yeah, but once you do such things, there'll always be a weak link.
Mate, this is a petri dish of toxic masculinity. We don't have time for nuances. His nuances fell apart. They deteriorated in the piano case.
True. He just needed to take better care of his people is all.
But I think there are some people that you just can't control, like Nicky Barnes, Cuba Gooding Jr.'s character. Like you just couldn't control him, and he didn't like the idea of being controlled because I guess far from him, but obvious to everyone else, he was never going to be someone that could effectively lead the community.
No, and I wouldn't even put it as lead the community because I wouldn't say Frank Lucas led the community.
Okay, all right. I've said a lot about economists, and I've made it very clear that I'm not an economist. But one day, friends and lovers, can we have a conversation about how a lot of the city budget doesn't account for criminal activities and donations, therefore, that are being contributed to political campaigns? And also that help re-inject money into the community. So sometimes the community just lives with it because at least they're getting something.
Yeah, there is that aspect. But then there's another aspect of destroying and killing your own people. And I think the one thing that this movie did quite well that I've not seen in, let's say, Snowfall is show the brutal realities of the effects of what Frank's drugs did to his community.
Yeah.
They weren't tiptoeing around it. It was quite vivid. There was no romanticizing of anything that Frank was doing, which I think is good. And I just applaud that aspect because sometimes we get into this sort of narcos mode where we're like plum or plata and we're like just, for the ride. But at the end of it,
you can fly.
Exactly.
Key and Peele, friends and lovers.
Yeah, you need to put your feet on the ground for a bit.
Literally. You can fly.
And see what the fuck these things are doing to the community.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Like, there are parts of ourselves, like, especially when you're watching older films, there are comments of, it's not even that old of a film, but like Legally Blonde, I laid it all on the table on how I felt about that film and even Coming to America. But in any case, when we watch a film, especially when it's not of our time, there are certain things that whether we can or not, we need to disband in order to enjoy it, right? And because there's so much fanfare around, the high of and rising in the ranks of drug dealing and benefiting from drug dealing, you kind of have to suspend that. The same way, like, cheating's very normal, right? So even if someone's cheating in a movie, you don't necessarily think they're a bad person. Well, if you're Glenn Close, you're going to have a bunny boiler problem. Otherwise, but you see what I'm saying? Like, you kind of, and if you don't, that's fine, but it's going to become a barrier. But I do agree 100%. There is not necessarily a glamorization, but there is definitely a veneer in order to enjoy what you're watching, albeit about Pablo Escobar and all of the destruction, in order to be able to valor your ghoulies and really be able to enjoy it to a particular degree. And I definitely agree with you, because that was one of the things that we were remarking on while we were watching this film. Because yes, Frank is aware and he's becoming rich and he's seeking opportunities to expand the blue magic of it all. He was also very aware of how it was affecting people, albeit he didn't care, but still they didn't shy away from that. And this is another interesting element coming into this as well. And I think it also speaks to the enterprising nature of Frank Lucas, because while there was so much focus, the Pablo Escobar of it all, the El Chapo of it all, they were all focusing in South America. They were focusing on Mexico, and they were looking for the drugs because that's traditionally at that point in time where all of the drugs were coming from. And it was kind of public knowledge to everyone, the effects that the drugs were having with the American soldiers, to some, the Vietnam War, to others, the American War, right? The effects that were happening to the soldiers there. And while people are looking at the tragedy of the news, Frank found a very tragic solution.
Yeah.
He found a way to bring in the drugs at a higher purity. What do you call it? A high
purity.
Yeah, it was interesting, albeit self-destructive. And we also talked about it in our Mystery Road episode, brilliant Australian film and TV series. Drugs fucks up a whole community, a whole country. But it kind of boosts the economy as well. So it is more dangerous than your Twilight vampires. Probably as sexually leeching as True Blood. Who knows?
But as long as I dole out some free chicken on the streets every other Sunday, then it's all good. You know, man, people are fucking sheep. It's the sort of mentality politicians have. You don't see them for the fucking entirety of their stay in power until it's election time and they come over with some cash and some fucking flour and you're king, you know? Ugh. I think that's what disgusted me with Frank. There was this barrier to me liking him or even relating to him as a character because I felt like, he doesn't really care. You know, it was just a matter of him getting rich because as soon as he got the money, he didn't do anything out of his way. He just wanted more. Even when he was told, you know, there's a time you can quit, you know?
Yeah.
Once they were all closing down, the US troops were being sent back.
It would have just been a natural close, yeah.
Nah, man, the guy just wanted more and more.
Yeah.
Just a greedy ass.
Okay, so I get it, OT Mackie. Drugs are bad. Like, I get that. But you also, you really liked and defended Ghost from Power.
Because he wanted to be better.
Or you just like drug men that are shit to their wives.
He wanted to be better. You know my stance with that. He wanted to be better, but he was always being pulled back.
So did Stringer Bell. Stringer Bell wanted to be better.
Yeah, and I was rooting for Stringer to be better. I was
so
rooting.
Did Franklin.
Franklin does not want to be better.
Oy. Come on, bro.
At least Colby and I are in the same position with Tasha being shit. And that's why it's you know.
And you also don't like Lala and you also don't like Sissy from Snowfall. I can tell you what the recurring theme is, sir. You're the male villain in a Tyler Perry movie, sir.
Wow. Wow. Jesus.
Cross it off your bingo cards, friends and lovers. Not that, but corrupt politicians. That's a carousel of topics that we like to cover, especially OT.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I thought it was, I guess from a strategic point of view, I just thought it was interesting that he found another angle to bring the drugs in.
Yeah, he was like, why should I go through some crooked cops when they themselves are cutting it down?
Can we talk about it?
Mm-hmm. And go straight to the source. Very entrepreneurial of him.
I think what I really liked about this film is it's so layered. It's very layered. You know, from Frank's camps to all of the potential mutinies, also to the police, right? You have Richie Roberts, who's really well-to-do in the most well-to-do sort of ways. There was a very pointed quote by the wife, but we'll come to that in a second. Mwah. I loved it. The writing in this was delightful. So you have Richie on, I guess, the side of justice, if that's what you want to call it. He kind of sounds like a vigilante in the night. But if you want to say he was on the side of justice, arguably, definitely on the other side, you have Detective Trooper. And he was in it all for himself, which is exactly what you were saying before. He was like, you're getting squeezed for money on all sides, really.
Yeah, man. Like, Trooper was the daddiest of cops. I think he would be Shane in the Shield.
I have some residual anger.
But yeah, he was the daddiest of them all. And I think the fact that we already said spoilers, but I knew from the get-go, he was never going to really, he's not the kind of person you'd see going to jail.
No.
Because the minute he saw his friends all get locked up, I was like, why not run? Maybe he's like, this is my country.
I thought this was America.
The answer to everything. And yeah, he just took his own life. And I was like, yeah, this is quite what I expected.
Yeah, because it's like, there's no way out, really.
Well, he could have tried to run.
Yeah.
Because before they got to him, they'd arrested like a slew of his own gang.
Okay, Archer 1950 ruse. curious if he didn't want the prospects of going to jail, because there would have been a whole mountain of evidence against him. Remember how Richie was trying to do his sting and then Trooper came in and took the money? So even that, like, I'm pretty sure they had years and years worth of evidence against him, because like we've talked about this in like When They See Us, and also, you know, more fictionally in Snowfall. But like, even though it's a few bad apples, to maintain the fact that the system is working, the police would continue to protect him until they couldn't protect him anymore.
But how do you justify him living in a mansion and driving luxurious cars? Like, he wasn't hiding shit.
Yeah.
How do you justify that? No one bothered asking?
I think it's bearer bonds. Am I saying words that make sense, friends and lovers? Please don't comment below.
It is insane.
But obviously he symbolized more, and I think his particular character was a culmination of characters as well, or people that existed that were condensed together. But yeah, he obviously was a problem, but he's also not unique, right? It's like, how do these things keep happening? Like, this isn't Scooby-Doo where you know, criminals do the darndest things. He would have got away with it too if it wasn't for scrappy Richie Roberts. Like,
oh wow! Like
it's obvious that people are embedded within the system for this to work. Like season 2 of The Wire. Like, there's no way that higher crime can be done unless there's a blind eye somewhere, right? And I guess that's where Trooper stands. But let's talk a little bit about Richie. Wow, you know. I'm not even going to repeat it, because that's your reward if you got all the way to the end of our A Few Good Men episode. But I guess in regards to that particular comment, I can see why people would see Russell Crowe the way they do.
Wow.
And I don't see the Tom Cruise thing, but again, go on. Or just fast forward to the end of A Few Good Men, but I'm not going to. You won't get that sound bite out of me today.
Well, he's as straight as they come, though, you know?
Is he, though?
He is. How many people do you know who can give back $1 million?
That's like, she was sucking my dick, but I didn't penetrate her, mate.
Self-control is key. Put some respect on people out there. Come on.
I didn't cheat on you, baby. Well, let's talk about it, because so he has this sense of justice, and he did remind me of McNulty, albeit this was around, actually no, this was around the time of The Wire. He reminded me of McNulty in the sense that, and I think it was even quoted in The Wire, you're not good for anything else. Like, you're police, but you're not good for anything or anyone else. And I'm pretty sure his best friend Bunk said that, which makes it even more stinging. But Richie was the same way. Like, we can talk about him as a police and how good he is, you know, the relative good and evil. But he was also a shit husband and a shit dad. So it's like, if you want to get your OT abacus out, it kind of doesn't really equate. And the wife said something to the effect of, you're going to the same hell with the crooked cops you can't stand.
Yeah, because like you said, life is fucking complex. You know, he can be the best cop there is out there, but there's another facet where he's a crap father and a crap husband. Yeah, you know. So
I'm pretty sure I was quoted to say shit father, shit husband, but yes.
But the interesting thing for me is that he's got this dogged determination to just, you know, catch the bad guy and, you know, just point him in a direction, and that's all he's good for. Yeah. And I think to some extent, you know, he even became a pariah with his own police officers because they couldn't trust him, because who the hell gives back $1 million untouched? Yeah. You know, and after that, his job wasn't really doable because they couldn't even back him up. Yeah. Because he's alone out there. Because if he's doing that, he could snitch on any other cop if you do something dirty, which I'm assuming every other cop was.
Well, think about it. It was almost $1 million and he turned that money in. Because I got confused and you had to explain that part to me. Because I was like, yeah, he did the right thing. But if these guys are crooked, they need to know that they are Denzel rolling in the Training Day dirt with him. Right? So like it took me a while to wrap my head around that. But I guess that makes sense, right? Because if you're doing dirty, you want to make sure that people at least aren't going to catch you out.
Yeah.
And almost $1 million, right?
True.
But let's come to the ending. Obviously, there are other characters that I want to go through, but this is important because we're talking about Richie and how he might not be a good, or he definitely is not a good husband and he's not a good father. So we've established that. He looks like a good fucker though, the biggest motherfucker. But so really, the only beacon of hope he has is that he has a sense of justice and he fights for what's right. Cool. We're all up to speed in our comprehension class, friends and lovers. We've got that. However, we get to the end of the film where Frank Lucas decides to share all of his information. I guess people can decide however they feel about Frank for snitching. But then once he gets out, Richie works with him. So we go through this moral quandary and, you know, Frank being super slick is like, oh, you turned down $1 million once. Can you do it again? So there was that tempting, right? There was that tempting in the wilderness. And then it turns out he ends up helping to get him out of jail, right? So it's like, what was this all for then?
Because he saw everyone he worked with was fucking corrupt. Might as well start.
That sounds like the most simplistic way to explain Joker.
But, you know, once you've put that many cops, you've arrested that many cops, you just have to ask yourself, you know, is it fucking worth it? And to him, it's like, nah.
But then if all you had was your, I guess, for lack of better word, moral fiber in regards to crime, and that all gets undone in the nth hour, then what do you have, sir? What was this long runtime for? Albeit an enjoyable film, but what was the point of the film if that was the only sort of credence he had?
What didn't seem plausible to me is the case for Frank Lucas would have been one of the biggest high profile cases that makes, you know, district attorneys to go into political streamlines, you know?
Oh, yeah.
And then this guy who just passes the bar in Richie Roberts, he gets that case. He's the DA for that case. I'm like, how? How is this even possible?
If you're going to do a crime, do a big crime, fam.
That doesn't even answer the question, mate.
KT from the 40 Reference Podcast 2021, baby.
Wow. Yeah, I was just looking at that, I'm like,
or shall I repurpose YG? Big crime, take little crime.
Maybe so.
You just need to do a big enough crime with enough people that you can throw others under the bus. That's what you need to be doing, I guess.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. You know, you can go and rob a liquor store and you'll get pretty much life, if anything else. And you get people like Frank Lucas out in 5 years because
it's the currency.
Yep.
He had a lot of criminal currency. I guess it's disheartening, but I guess it's on brand for real life, I suppose.
It is.
Well, were you expecting any sort of, I guess even though it is based on a person, but we didn't really know anything. Were you expecting any sort of real justice?
No, not really.
Because I don't think we saw much justice in way of crooked cops or with crime.
No. I wonder how long the cops even got sentenced for. Probably out after the next day. But yeah. Such is life.
Embroider that shit on a pillow. Yeah, I don't know, because I was really enjoying Richie's character until the end, because I'm just like, what's the point then? You put up this task force, and you're right. You're absolutely right. And it was interesting to see, I guess, the investigation unfold, because Frank Lucas was a big question mark until he decided to Heisenberg himself, Breaking Bad reference. No one knew who he was. No one really had any photos of him until he turned up with that coat at the boxing match.
Which was fucking ridiculous.
But you like when Heisenberg did it, when Walter White did it.
He beats He called out Huey Lucas, told him, stop dressing fancy.
In loud suits.
In literally like the first 10 minutes or 20 minutes of the movie.
Yeah.
You know, be calm. And then he fucking wears a chinchilla coat, fur coat into some high profile boxing with red carpet. I'm like,
Yeah.
who's this guy? Clearly, as soon as Richie saw that, he was like, let me take a picture of this guy.
Like, I don't know what this is, but it's something.
Yeah, it's something. I've never seen him. Don't know who this is, but it's something.
But it was also because the bosses of particular boroughs were respecting him and he got a better seat than them. That's where the cogs were turning as well.
Yeah.
But you don't have to go out and stunt, especially when he did say it to his brother because he was comparing him to Nicky Barnes.
Yeah.
And he's like, you don't, like, it's too loud. It's too jazzy, sir.
He was way louder than Nicky ever was.
Well, I guess in his sense, it's a different set of rules, maybe. Or he only did it once, therefore it's not too much of a problem.
Yeah, he just thought his shit don't stank, man.
Well, your Walter White shit stank, so evaluate that too.
How can you even compare the two?
No, I guess, well, without spoilers, because I guess some people might not have watched Breaking Bad, but it got to a point where Walter White wanted people to know. He wanted to be the one that references. Fuck you guys. That's what you get for wanting the real quote. No, but it's like, if you want that anonymity, you can't get that prestige. That's the trade-off.
But do you really even care with all that? I guess, yeah, true. No,
it's just interesting where you allow it in some characters and you don't allow it in
it's
others.
just weird. He talks about his principles, beats up people for his principles, and then goes
Walter White had principles too, apparently, and Skylar was the problem. Let me know when we're ready to talk about how we criminalized and we villainized Skylar, okay? Because when we're ready for that, friends and lovers, I know that there's some real healing that can happen in the world.
Let me give you a thesis on her. No, we're diverting too much anyway. It's
No, you just don't want to talk about Skylar.
we'll probably save it for a ref plus or some shit.
Yeah.
But anyway, Frank, that was the one moment in the movie. Like I've mentioned two already.
Yeah.
Which just didn't seem plausible. But Frank walking in there without fur coat, even if it's this evil lady, the wife that gave it to him, nah, you just don't do that shit.
Yeah. No, it didn't make sense. And obviously he wanted the king shit treatment, but that also means you get king shit attention.
Yup.
So I guess we saw that's where it started to crumble because really there was no tangible leads. They knew someone was being reported to. It even got to a point where Richie was wondering who Frank was reporting to. He didn't think that he was the one bringing in the drugs. He could have just skated by.
Yeah, there's no way they would have thought a black guy was leading this.
Interesting. Let's talk about that. I guess racism. Is that the easiest and most complex answer? I think so.
Well, if you're a criminal, you want them to be as racist as fuck to undermine you then.
Right, because then they'll never suspect you. So I guess the advice here is, and you didn't hear it, but do a crime that your race isn't expected to do.
Yup.
And you'll be fine.
Oh, dear. Oh, just don't live, what's that guy's name that was trying to frame black people and live watermelon rinds and shit?
Manson. Yep, crime happens in all shapes and racist forms, friends and lovers. But it was definitely one of those quotes where it's like that Leonardo pointing at the screen Once Upon a Time in Hollywood where you're like, they did a commentary. That's it. All enraptured in that quote. Can't be a black guy. Just, there you go.
Well, Richie pretty much gets laughed out of the office because he's like, Frank Lucas leads this thing.
Well, no, because that's part of the problem. And obviously we're not cops or anything in real life. But like, that's the problem. You can't make claims. You need your evidence because he didn't really have anything at that point.
They could have listened because he was like, what do you mean? You think Italians would let this happen?
The Rainbow Coalition. Go and listen to our Judas and the Messiah. I didn't misspeak. Why, OT?
We both know. We all know, rather, that Jesus was black.
So the black is redundant.
Yup.
And also, we covered it on Patreon, Startup with Eddie Kathegi and the Brody, your Brody fella from the OC.
Yup.
Because I guess people underestimate that sometimes different races can find a common enemy. And they can work together in peace and harmony. There was some really good quotes in the film. I've got a couple that I want to go through. This is also in regards to Richie, and they're trying to figure out, I guess, the big question mark. Who is this person? Do you remember back in the day where they used to play Pokemon in the commercial ads? They used to have the outline of the Pokemon. Sad life for you. But the quote was, who can afford to sell twice as good for half as much? And I guess it's also, they were seeing the changing behaviors of the crime game, of the drug game.
Yeah.
Because things, like, it had been not watered down, but the quality, the purity of it had been played with around so much, right? And I guess that was part of the problem as well, that people were overdosing because they were so used to it being so diluted.
Yep. That's how Richie loses his partner.
Yeah. Yeah. And very interesting. I think it was interesting the way that they chose to write Richie's character, in particular with his partner as well. Because it's like, obviously he had some sort of allegiance to take care of his partner, but it got to a point where it's like, dude, you killed a drug deal. Like, I can't protect you. I guess in the film in particular, we were seeing a shifting of operations and profit margins, and how could it possibly be if everyone's getting the drugs from one supplier, then how is it possible? And I guess that's the other element, and that's the enterprising nature of Frank Lucas and what he introduced in the film. OT, I want to come to you for a second, because it's been a couple of days since we've watched the film. So I just want to have a look at the parents' guide on IMDb, because we're not about the kids, but we do love our daddies. Yes, I'm speaking on behalf of both of us. Sex and nudity, severe. Oh, actually, no, that's a good point. Let's talk about it. So usually when there's cooking up going on, you'll see people in their underwear.
Yeah.
So again, our reference of things is through TV shows and movies. Don't report us. So that's fine. There were a lot of titties in this.
Yeah.
And there were pussies as well. But it didn't feel gratuitous. Like, I think that's the most amount of titties I've seen in a film, but it didn't feel gratuitous.
Well, Lauren zooming in or some shit, you know?
Like Joss Whedon.
I wasn't getting up shots. I'd even forgotten about that.
Right. Interesting. Because, like, I guess I agree that there was a lot of nudity, but it wasn't severe in the intensity or the gratuity of it.
Yeah, true.
Violence and gore, severe.
Maybe we're just desensitized now to shit.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe. Profanity, severe.
I can't remember any profanity.
I think Deadwood is my level of profanity. There were a lot of fucks in Deadwood. But yeah, anyway. But I thought that was quite interesting to go through.
Well, it didn't strike any chord with me with all those 3 ratings there, so...
Yeah, but I guess, like you said, it's different now. So if you compare a film many, many years ago to now, obviously it's not going to stand a chance. Let's talk about Frank's family. He had a lot of brothers.
He did.
Which I think is very useful if you need some fronts and you need to launder some money.
Which he did.
He brought his whole family down. A family business, a family affair, Mary J. Blige, if you're nasty.
But, you know, they knew what he did. Like the mom said, you know, your brothers will do whatever it is you said. But the point towards the end where the mom is like, we don't kill police, Franklin. If you kill a police, I will disown you. I'm like, ugh. Come on now, you know the game.
You know what this is.
You know how your son is getting the money.
You're standing in a fucking palace, mate.
You just told him how proud you are when he got into the house. Huh? How did you think this driver got all this money?
Yeah. T.I. was also in this film as well.
It was supposed to be a promising baseball player.
Yeah, there was quite a lot of guest stars in this film. How did you feel about Chiwetel's character?
They're all dumb. I don't think there's anyone.
Whoa! Even Huey.
What exactly did they all do that warranted any sort of or gave out an essence of intelligence in anything that they did?
Well, when you phrase it like that.
My God, he couldn't even get away from Richie.
Yeah.
Ugh, Come on.
Well, I can't even bring a defense there.
Plus, he was driving around Frank Lucas with a truck full of coke in the back.
Yeah, actually, okay.
Nah.
How do you even excuse that? Are you dumb?
Yeah, he was all just dumb. I don't even know. Frank would have been better off just getting professional people, because there's nothing. It wasn't anything. He didn't get any sort of loyalty because his own cousin Jimmy gave him up.
Well, yeah, if there was a weak link at Fialtes, it was definitely going to be him.
Yeah.
I think, I guess maybe it's just the way that the film framed it, if you'll pardon the pun. But it seemed like Frank Lucas was really the only option to take the mantle.
Yeah.
There is a very sweet kill, and I'm talking about Tango's character. He really was fine to muscle on in. And again, it was me, because it's rare that you have a film that doesn't explain everything to you. And this is when I realize and humble myself that I'm not as smart as I think I am, because without them explaining it, I wasn't understanding it, like the way that no one trusted Richie. But also in this sense, I didn't understand why Tango kept trying to muscle in, and you're explaining to me it's because Frank was supplying the drugs. It wasn't his corners. They were Tango's corners, right? So Tango kept coming in with his 20%, give me 20%. And the way he died was great, because never, ever, ever, ever have I watched a film or a TV show where you have not necessarily a dickhead, but you have a character sizing the other person up, being like, shoot me, come on, shoot me, motherfucker got shot. When does that ever happen? People don't joke in this film. If they're gonna shoot you, they're not going to have a mustache twirling speech. They're gonna fucking shoot you. And then they left the change with him. Oh, I've never played Yakuza, but that felt like a very Yakuza kill, OT.
Wow. Yeah, that was quite something to behold. And the fact that no one even bothered to give a shit, no one reported, maybe because Frank fed the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Yeah. He didn't even seem like a likable guy anyway, so there's that.
No, he always plays that I'm better than you, but I end up getting shot.
He needs us to go back to Luther. We need some more seasons of Luther.
Luther! I think there's a film coming out soon, isn't there?
Oh, interesting.
Hopefully with Ruth Wilson. We love Ruth Wilson as well. Speaking of someone that we love, that I don't know if this worked, because say what you will about Tango, but Idris Elba kind of fit the archetype of Tango, yeah? Common was in this film as well.
Oh.
And I think maybe aside from Method Man, Common is probably the next rapper that's appeared in our podcast the most. Just by accident, by default, by divine combination. Who knows?
I just expect a speech every time I see Common.
But he was evil in this. That's what I didn't understand. He was doing the crime.
I wonder how hard he fought just trying to preach to everyone there.
There was some heavy editing.
Yeah. It was probably like Nas and Belly. Just
go and check out our Belly episode, friends and lovers. Method Man's also in there, is he not? You know we've done back-to-back Method Man with Belly and Concrete Cowboy.
Wow, yeah.
You're welcome. We're all welcome, friends and lovers. Is there anything else you want to cover, my love?
Nah, that's all.
Ooh. Theo says hi, friends and lovers. You can probably hear him frustratingly in the background. Let's finish off in a segment we call For Your Reference. OT.
I will reference Snowfall.
Nice. Because you love Sissy Saint so much, hey?
Yup. Get your sissy fix.
And also, I don't think we explicitly said it, but Frank Lucas did remind me of Franklin as well. So very excited for the next season of Snowfall to come out. I will reference Song Kang-ho, the daddy of South Korea and worldwide cinema, the drug king.
Oh, look at you.
Yeah, look at me. If you'd like to look at us looking at you, don't worry about how we're doing it. On Twitter and Instagram, we're at ForYourFPod.
Write us an email at hello@f4podcast.com.
We're also at Loud Suits Podcast if you'd like to leave a rating and review. And we'll see you guys next week.
See ya.
Bye.